Okay, well, thank you all for joining us for our afternoon session here. Joined by Jim Wong and Jamie Mickelson from the Chainguard team, who are going to be talking through a little bit about the migration to Chainguard and what that looks like from a best practices perspective, and some of the observations that they've had. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to them.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Good? Awesome. I am Jim Wong. I'm a Principal Technical Success Manager at Chainguard. I have a background in both customer success and development. Previously led DevOps team in big corporates before my startup journey.
My name is Jamie Mickelson, and I'm a Director of Professional Services at Chainguard. My background is in software engineering, DevOps, and I've done consulting for some of the largest companies in the world.
Well, thank you for coming today to join me and Jimmy on this topic, seamless migration to Chainguard. We want you to walk away with clear answers to these two questions today. Number one, what do I need to get ready for Chainguard? Number two, is migrating to Chainguard a heavy lift? Without further ado, let's start with the first question. What do I need to do to get ready for Chainguard? This is a frequent question we get from customers and prospects. So we gather some insights from the field and technical success managers to identify some key factors. The top four are leadership buy-in, migration strategy, phased approach with dedicated owner, clear milestones and timelines, and enforcement on CVE reduction. Then it's followed by technical deep dive, strong champions leading the adoption and implementation, sense of urgency, close partnership, golden image program, etc. So while these are similar factors that we observed, but the reality is so much of this depends on your relative maturity. That's why we built a maturity model to help you assess where you are, identify the gaps, and provide tailored recommendations. Now, the focus of this maturity model is not just on Chainguard deployment. It's much broader than that. So with the benefit of talking to hundreds of customers as they're exploring different ways to secure their software development and distribution, we recognize some patterns and characteristics, and we map those across 5 different maturity levels. It starts with ad hoc. At this level, you have no centralization. Everybody's pulling from public repository, right? Security is an afterthought. And therefore, you will have high exposure to risks. And you have repetitive work across dev teams. As you start to realize the importance of basic scanning and central monitoring, you step into the where level. But patching at this level is still manual. There's no consistency in security enforcement. So you have to accept that there are some known insecure practices in your organization. As you start integrating security into your CI/CD pipeline, you step into the standardized level. This is where you have patching process defined with clear SLAs. But a problem with that is you still have the challenge of growing backlog for your developers, right? Which cause tension between innovation and remediation. And as you step into the automated level, this is where you see the self-service automation and infrastructure as code. And sometimes you may have already started a golden image program because you realize shifting left is not going to solve the problem. You need to start left with 0 CVE, hardened, and minimal images. But we often see customers are getting a little frustrated because they're going with the DIY route, and which accumulate a lot of engineering toil over there, right? So regardless if you make a strategic decision to offload those golden image responsibilities to vendors, or somehow you manage it internally to make it right and scale, you can still move up to the pioneering level. At this level, you will have full automation with 0 CVE, hardened, minimal images. Also, you will have enforcement with zero trust security policies. And you will see increased efficiency, business, and security resilience. And you will get more time to focus on innovation and continuous improvement. As organizations move up the maturity level, we often see they have reduced toil, faster time to market, and strengthened security without making developers hating their lives. I'm sure you know where you are today now, based on the high-level description. And Chainguard customers have a broad spectrum of maturity levels. That's why we built this maturity model to help assess and identify and mapping those gaps. Let's take a look at some examples that our customers, how do they get ready for Chainguard? And more critically, how do they strengthen their software development with secure images and processes? So this is a customer in the SMB. They're in the cybersecurity and AI industry. They have a small developer community, wanted to move from FedRAMP moderate to FedRAMP high. But the problem was they were facing 10 critical CVEs per day. And they had 2 dedicated FTEs focusing on cleaning containers, creating sticks. And they were coming in as a level that's close to standardized. By the way, this is not a mispositioned box, because they were close to standardized, but they were lacking of an automated CI/CD pipeline. So after 6 months partnership with them, we were able to reduce the critical CVE daily from 10 down to 0. And we helped them accelerate the FedRAMP processes with the pre-hardened 0 CVE FIPS-ready images with sticks. And we helped them set up a streamlined vulnerability management by saving them significant time in ATO processes. And by the way, do you remember the 2 FTEs they were dedicating and doing all the stuff? We freed up all their time so they can focus on building the future rather than patching the past. Now, some things I want to call out that contributed to the accelerated adoption with this customer. They were exploring Chainguard images ahead of time. And they did a POV with us, fully tested 2 images. And because they were lacking of CI/CD pipeline that I said earlier, so we focus on that. We mature their CI/CD pipeline with DevSecOps best practices. And also we helped develop a detailed rollout plan with clear roles and responsibilities. Their dev teams were really committed to move fast, which really helped us to accelerate adoption. End of the day, they deployed all images to prod within 1 month. And with all that great work, they moved up to automated level. So some patterns we noticed working with SMB customers. Oftentimes we see before we even start kicking things off, their first image was already in production because their tech leads were exploring Chainguard free images online ahead of time. Second pattern is getting to the pioneering stage might not be their goal, but if it is, they get the fastest timeline to maturity. Another example from mid-market. This is a customer from the financial services industry. They have a medium-sized developer community, multiple teams per line of business. The goal was to reduce the risks of a potential breach and the compliance fines along with that. But they were trying with the DIY route for quite a while, which created a lot of engineering toil. So after they've decided to move forward with Chainguard, they set up a very ambitious timeline, which is to deploy all images to prod within 2 months. Now that's a very ambitious goal because it's not a small set of images. They have a decent amount to work with. So the good news was they already have well-structured DevSecOps practices, and they have a strong leadership buy-in, communication skills, and they have internal documentation set up, right, with enablement sessions, office hours, and adoption reporting. And they have a success plan that's broken down into 6 different cycles, 2 weeks per cycle. But the problem with that was there was no mandate on adoption. And there's no active blocker on any security violations through quality gates. So it was really hard for them to scale. And they have a growing backlog of security tasks for developers. So end of the day, it was like a delegate game, right, to help balance between the developer experience and the security compliance. So we focused on improving their developer experience. and we helped train their champions through a trainer development course. And we helped develop some incentives to encourage individuals who want to become a domain experts, or what they called it was vulnerability slayers. Along with their stick approach, which is having the compliance reporting internally. And we also helped develop a developer survey to try to gather some feedback, because we want to make sure everybody's opinion is counted. And we follow up on those feedback to close the loop. Most importantly, we captured the value and ROIs with some early adopters and did an internal roadshow to share some success stories. And the result of that was 75% of images in prod within 1 month, along with 94% CVE reduction. And after 6 months, they have 100% Chainguard image adoption across all apps. And it's still 100% to date. Are you curious where they are today? Any guesses? All right. Yeah, there we go, bingo. So proud to say they're at the pioneering level. We really helped push them through the finish line. Now they have zero trust security policy with enforcement in place, while having a very engaging cutting-edge dev community. Some patterns to share, working with mid-market customers. There is a correlation between the depth of internal resources and the accelerated adoption and maturity growth. What I mean by internal resources is those internal documentation you set up, and enablement sessions, office hours, you have champions to drive the whole thing. Another example to share. This is a customer in the healthcare industry. It's a large enterprise customer. They have a huge developer community, multiple organizations, very fragmented image distribution processes and structures. It's all over the place. They should have been at the automated level, because they already have the golden image program setting up. They're curating the images for the dev community. But with different maturity levels across different teams, it really averaged them down to standardized level. It was extremely difficult for them to get it right and scale, because they have so many use cases. And even for a single image, they will have many variations to it. And in their base images, they have significant amount of CVEs. So based on that, we immediately took a phased approach. Phase 1 was voluntary period for 6 months. During that time, we onboarded 20 SMEs through a series of technical deep dive sessions to identify blockers and tailor the migration plans. The result of that was 85% CVE reduction, while avoiding over 2,000 CVEs per month. And we built up a close partnership to understand their security, business, and operations. So it helped us to build a detailed plan later on for the company-wide enforcement. So phase 2, that was company-wide enforcement. We were able to consolidate all the structures and processes and create this very comprehensive adoption tracking strategy for them, which includes their compliance report per line of business that they set up internally, plus this out-of-box CVE comparison in our console, which Dan showed everybody earlier this morning during keynote. And when the report first came out, within 3 weeks, there was 4% adoption increase. And we doubled adoption rate within 2 months. And we helped further mature their golden image program with Center of Excellence, set up the clear roles and responsibilities, golden objectives, and communication plans, enablement sessions. And most importantly, they have their internal MBO, which is management by objectives, set up to enforce the CVE reduction. We all know turning a big ship takes time. It was not easy. But they were able to move up to the automated level on average, which is exciting. We really acted as one team and saved this customer from building a container management process in-house and saving them significant engineering toil, resource, and time. Some patterns I want to share with you working with large customers, large enterprise customers, they all took a phased approach. Regardless if you're based on the user base, migration complexity, or application criticality, they all took a phased approach. It was very effective because you get the quick win at the beginning, solving those low-hanging fruit, right, to really boost the excitement for adoption. And also you earn yourself more time to iron out any kinks of those complex use cases and try to streamline internal processes. And oftentimes we see there's massive decrease of CVEs from the get-go. And another pattern we've seen is they all have some level of enforcement with reporting and golden image program. Maybe they don't call it golden image program, but it's something similar to that fact. Now, no matter the size of your organization, the maturity level you're at, you all follow the same Chainguard journey. It's a structured path with timelines, milestones, and qualitative elements. As you can see, this is a continuous engagement. As you see more values, you probably want to onboard more teams. And those teams probably need more images. We will be there with you throughout your entire journey. Now, when people ask you, how do I get ready for Chainguard? I hope you know the answer. The answer is that it will differ for every organization based on your size and maturity level. So work with us. We'll help you assess where you are, identify the gaps, and so we can further assist you on not only having a paved path to Chainguard, but also progressing your maturity level. Those same rules apply when thinking of migrating to Chainguard. To share more, I'd like to hand this over to Jamie.
All right, so as Jem took you through the maturity model, understanding your organization's maturity is going to help determine what the framework and the plan is for your organization's migration. So for example, customers that have things like automated CI/CD pipelines, mature testing practices, as Jem went over, they're gonna have more of an accelerated migration, while customers who are not quite as mature will have a different migration path that might take a bit longer. So the maturity model, as Jem said, is really going to help you assess where you're at, and the Chainguard team is here to help you fill in the details and create that plan. So as you start thinking about the migration, there's a few pre-migration considerations that you're going to want to think about. So the first is going to be you're going to want to align with your internal teams, right? So review the images that you've purchased, really determine which teams are going to be involved and what applications are going to be using each image. And you want to make sure that you notify those teams and that they're involved so that they can begin preparing for the migration. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you prepare any user or system access to your Chainguard registry. As part of that, an important decision that you need to make is to consider whether or not you're going to mirror your images in the Chainguard registry to an internal registry that works with your internal workflows. And then lastly, check the images overview page in the images directory, right? So every image is going to have exist in the images directory. Check for compatibility because there might be things that are different, such as user ID, permissions, or even value path differences with the Chainguard image that you're going to be aware of, that you're going to want to be aware of as you start migrating. And so recommended rollout strategy when we actually get to the actual migration. So we're going to recommend in general that you start migrating your application images first. So in general, base images do tend to take a bit longer to migrate simply because the complexity of coordinating multiple different teams, testing, release schedules, and because of that, what we recommend when I say start with application images first, begin with application images while in parallel, you work with all those teams and do all the coordination at the same time to get the base images and that migration going. One important thing is don't upgrade your application version at the same time that you're doing the migration. So you want to make sure that as you migrate, you're using the same exact version that's running in your current environment, and make sure that's the same version of the Chainguard image that you're migrating to. Next, we highly recommend that you start with your less complex and non-critical applications, right? This is going to build confidence, give you some of those early wins, and get the experience before you really migrate your mission-critical workloads. Next, we're going to recommend that you take a small subset of images and gradually deploy those to a non-production environment. Test and validate those images, and then take a small percentage of your production images, migrate to production, and then gradually scale up. And in doing that, we recommend that you use strategies that you're all probably familiar with, like a blue-green deployment or a canary release, so that you're really introducing the Chainguard images gradually into your production environment. So once you start deploying your images, testing, validation, and then how do you maintain the images is very important. So it's always a best practice, right, to incorporate testing. So things like unit testing, integration testing, user experience testing, all very important to make sure that your application is working as you expect throughout the migration. We also recommend that you monitor performance, right? So setting up observability, tools like Prometheus, Grafana, Elk Stack is really going to help monitor container performance. You're going to want to pay attention to things like CPU, memory usage, and request latency. Those are all important metrics to keep an eye out for. And then we do also recommend that you have some type of centralized logging that is going to help collect logs from your new containers so that you have easier troubleshooting and debugging. And lastly, once you have actually migrated to Chainguard images, how are you going to keep those images up to date, right? That's really important. So there's multiple ways to do this, but we do offer a Chainguard's Digest-a-Bot, which is a free GitHub action that's going to be available to all of our customers for this purpose. So make sure that once your images are in production, you're actually keeping them up to date and they have 0 CVEs moving forward. So I want to talk a little bit just about a large enterprise customer, what an example migration strategy might look like here. So if we take the example of an e-commerce retail customer, and I'll just give you a little background about this customer. So they have multiple teams literally deploying multiple images simultaneously. So they have very accelerated timelines. They have a very large developer community, so you're talking about thousands of developers that are going to need to use these Chainguard images and be potentially part of the migration. And in addition, there's very mixed maturity on the DevSecOps practices. And so Jem gave an earlier example where different organizations just might be at different maturity levels, and that's exactly what we saw here. So once we talk about the migration strategy, here's what we did. Here's what the customer did. We worked together to put this framework and plan together. So they did exactly what we just talked about. They did the phased approach. They took their less complex, non-critical applications and migrated them first. They followed all the best practices, making sure that they deployed to non-prod before going to prod, that they migrated a subset of images first, and they used the canary rollout for their deployment strategy to make sure that they were doing the gradual rollout. So in addition, what we did for this customer is we did a lot of tailored enablement and training for them. So this is a big part of how we help our customers. And so in this particular instance, we really helped the customer with container strategy, right? Because again, there was the varying levels of maturity throughout the organizations, and this was an important topic to make sure all teams were aligned on. We also did a lot of technical sessions to help build the skills and build the confidence of the developers that were going to be participating in the migration by talking about things like Docker, Kubernetes, cloud providers, and security to make sure all the teams had the knowledge and the information they needed to be successful. And lastly, as part of the migration strategy, just so you know, they did have an automated CI/CD pipeline with testing, they had monitoring, and we were able to help them successfully set up the automated updates so that they could maintain the images. One thing that I'll note here, because it wasn't available for this customer, we now have the Docker file migration tool, if you've not heard of that. That would have been really helpful here, just didn't exist when this customer started their migration. And so that tool is going to take your existing Docker file and really just help you transform that and prepare that for the Chainguard images that need to be updated within that Docker file. And so if you're curious about this customer, right, going back to the maturity model, where was this customer on the maturity model? So when we started the migration, they were at standardized. So they did have CI/CD pipelines, they did have the automated testing, like I said. And if you're wondering where that blue box is of where they are now, it's not up here because we're still actively working with them to get them to the next level. And so to go along with this, just wanted to give you an example timeline for this customer of how we were able to help them. So on July 18th, this customer literally became a Chainguard customer. And on July 24th, just a week later, we had that joint kickoff call with the customer to really understand and establish what the success and migration plan was going to be. By August 24th, a team had piloted the initial deployment of several Chainguard images. They piloted the rollout, the testing, the migration, and then they were able to take those learnings and really discuss that and share that with the other teams throughout their business. And literally, just two short months later, there were 6 additional teams that began and were successful in migrating to Chainguard images. And by December 24th, at the 6-month progress update, over 26,000 CVEs had been remediated, which was a huge accomplishment for them in their primary use case for moving to Chainguard images. And then just a month later, when we checked up and we did our business review with them, we were able to determine that they have achieved 25% return on their initial investment, which was a huge win for them. And so that's just an example of a customer, and you've heard the customer stories from Jem. But here's some real live customers that we've helped. So we have helped multiple customers across multiple different industry verticals migrate to Chainguard images, regardless of their use case or their maturity level. And so just reiterating that your team here at Chainguard is really going to help you assess your maturity and then help you put a plan in place to migrate and make sure that you're successful in doing that. And so one of the things that we've done is we've created a migration best practices guide. So everything that we've talked about here that I just shared with you, some of those high-level things about gradual rollouts and canary or blue-green deployments, all of that here is in our migration best practices guide. And so it's pretty comprehensive. It's going to give you an overview on how to get started with Chainguard images if you're new to this journey. It's going to give you all the migration strategies, recommendations, and best practices at a deeper level than what we've talked about here. And lastly, it's going to give you a bunch of troubleshooting and debugging tips. So what happens? How do you debug some of these distroless containers? What does that look like as you start down your migration journey? And so I hope that, the time spent here, there's 2 main takeaways that you take away from what Jem and I have told you today. So the first is that your organizational maturity is absolutely going to play a key role in driving success when you start your migration. And the second thing is that Chainguard, your team here, is going to be your strategic partner in helping you migrate and making sure that your migration is successful. And so at that point, what we'll do is we'll open it up for Q&A if anyone has any questions for Jem and I.
I have a question. So I think this migration strategy is perfect if I am curating my own Kubernetes manifest, which points to a golden image, right? But a lot of times we inherit Kubernetes manifest or like a Helm chart that deploys, say, Nginx, right? Like, for example, yesterday, there was an ingress nightmare, critical, a bunch of CVs uncovered, right? And the authors produced a Docker image, which has a fix, but they delayed releasing the Helm chart, which points to a valid Docker image, right? So my question is, like, what is a migration strategy if as a consumer, if I'm consuming a Helm chart, and not the Docker image directly? Like, do you expect like customers to patch the Kubernetes manifests themselves in order to move to newer versions of third-party Docker images? What's the migration path for those cases?
Yeah, so I'll just say today, yes, you will have to update your Docker file, absolutely. What I will say is we've heard from many customers, though, that having Helm, like supported Helm charts that get released along with our images is important. And so that's something that we're continuing to have conversations with our product and engineering teams to see how we can prioritize and get that on the roadmap. Yeah, great point.
Other questions?
I've got one. When it comes to, I think one of the key takeaways from what you've shared is that based on your size, this may be a phased migration, and it should be so that you can get that initial success and kind of get a little bit more momentum behind you. How do you think about how that phased approach fits with like whether you're doing this kind of looking backwards or immediately focusing on only net new projects? What kind of role does it play to look at just the newest things where you have the best chance at a more simplified implementation? Does that question make sense?
Newest things, you mean like?
New development projects that are in an organization's environment.
Gotcha. So you're saying like if when we prioritize the phased approach, if there's a new project going on, and should we like start with that team with the golden images first?
Yeah.
That we've seen customers do that because if you're working with like green apps, it's really easy for them to just start with Chainguard images because everything is hard and you don't have to worry about that to get this quick win to show the rest of the team, how powerful Chainguard images are because they will see like the comparison of. For example, you're doing the Java application, right? This greenfield app, Java application, and there is no CVE after using Chainguard images. And you can pick up a similar size of a similar technology from different teams and realize, okay, there are thousands of CVEs available. So we can see that results early on, which is a good indicator of benefit of using Chainguard images. So I would definitely go with that route if this is something okay with the customer, yeah.
And then I'll just add, right, for the developers in the room, I think you all know your applications, right? So you are going to have those existing applications, right, the non-new projects, legacy that are existing. And I think, like I said, I think the complexity of your applications, and that's why we recommend, starting with, your less critical workloads, being able to assess the more easy applications, just to gain the experience and the confidence of doing this before you really go for your more complex applications.
Yep.
Hi, I don't know if this is quite related to this talk, but we are trying to get to a model where the broader company is aware of vulnerabilities and there is responsibilities assigned for different images to different teams and right. In that context, do you have any recommendations for scanning and reporting, right? And so that everybody knows what they're looking at and what they're responsible and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, first question I want to ask you before you hand this mic back to Sam. Do you have any level of enforcement from the leadership?
Yes.
You do? Okay. So that's definitely something we can do is based on the experience I shared earlier, there's a compliance reporting per line of business. What we can do is set up like the report to show how many line of business you have and how many applications you have per line of business and what technology they're using, what language they're using. Are they compliant or are they non-compliant, right? And we're gonna focus on those non-compliant containers first. And also, like I said, we have this out-of-box CVE comparison report that's in our console, which give you the comparison between like using Chainguard images versus the alternatives. So that's another good report we can marry together. So we can definitely work together on that. I see you're already a customer, definitely happy to talk to you more after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Great. Are there any other questions? Anything else we can clear up? Wonderful. Well, just want to thank you too. Wonderful presentation.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.